Hello, and welcome to the third lecture of the GE title Individual and Society. In the previous two lectures, I discussed the introduction to the paper GE Individual and Society, and I also discussed Siegfried Sassoon's anti-war memoir titled Return from the Somme. I welcome you all to Hansraj e-Samvaad. My name is Piyush Chaudhary. Today, I'll be taking up the second unit of the syllabus. This is the third lecture and the second unit of the syllabus, and that is Dulce et Decorum est by Wilfred Owen. It's a poem, it's an anti-war poem, a very graphic poem. Basically, it describes the real life horrors of the war. It's a wonderfully constructed poem where Wilfred Owen describes the ordeals of war, the horrors of war, the ghastly nature of war, the effects of war on the human psyche, and how it is the human body which bears the brunt of the war most despicably. Reading this poem will basically take you back to the real life horrors of World War I and what people actually suffered. It's a dramatic description of what Wilfred Owen sees, because as we all know, Wilfred Owen was a war poet. Wilfred Owen was a soldier, and he unfortunately died just a few days before the armistice was signed between the Germany and the British and the French forces. So just a few days before Wilfred Owen died, and he describes whatever he sees around him, what he actually witnessed while he was at war for his country, and he describes that through this poem that is there in our syllabus. So the very dramatic description of this poem, the way that Wilfred Owen describes very dramatically, it basically, it shows the psychological and the physical sufferings of the soldiers. It makes the entire ordeal very vivid for the readers, right? So the psychological suffering, the physical suffering, this is what is shown, through these poems, through this particular poems. Now, Wilfred Owen earlier on described this particular poem, Dulce et Decorum est, as simply a gas poem. While he was, describing it to his mother, he said that this is just a gas poem. A poem on the very latest development of warfare, and that was the poisonous gas. So you will realize, upon a closer reading of this poem, you will realize that the poem shows the ugly side of war. The poem and the poet, for that matter, both the poem and the poet are trying very hard to make the readers realize that there is no glory in war, that there is no glory in dying, in such a pathetic way, right? There is no glory in war. So the poet is basically showing you the ugly side of war, the real side of war, right from line number 1. Right? So what it does, it strips the glorified image of war. Obviously, several times it is considered that war is a glorious thing. It is glorious to die for your country. But just like Siegfried Sassoon, Wilfred Owen also, but obviously much more emphatically, much more, with a much greater force, he is stressing on the idea that it is not glorious to die for one's country. So what Owen is doing here is he's stripping away the glory of which is usually so often associated with war. So let us now start reading the poem, and I'll be reading the poem line by line, and I'll be also offering you my interpretation, my analysis of the poem as we go through, right? So as you can see on the screen, and I'm reading the poem: bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs and towards our distant rest began to trudge. So in the first 4 lines, you see each and every word that Owen is writing, it creates an effect on the reader. It creates an effect of horror on the reader, and the horrifying imagery, it's prevalent throughout. He says that bent double. So these warriors, these men in the battle, which obviously includes Wilfred Owen himself, so he's bent double because of the weight that is there on their bags. So they are bent double, right? Like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed because of the weight, their knees are knocking together, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge. Focus on each and every word that Wilfred Owen is using. He's saying that we cursed through sludge. Cursed. So there is no glory. They are cursing for the fact that they have to go through this ordeal. No human deserves to go through this ordeal, right? So he says, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs and towards our distant rest began to trudge. So when the enemy is haunting them, when the enemy is hunting them with flares, so they are, walking heavily, walking fast, to their distant rest where they are going to rest because they can see the enemies are attacking from ahead, right? Look at the next line, line number 5. He says, and I'm quoting, men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots but limped on bloodshot. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. Unquote. So what is being described here? The pathetic situation of the soldiers is basically being described here, right? So he's saying that men marched asleep. So the level of tiredness, you can understand that the level of exhaustion is so much that these people are marching asleep. If you remember in the very first topic that we studied, Sassoon mentioned that he saw an army of ghosts. Similarly, here Wilfred Owen is saying that he can see men marching asleep, that is his fellow soldiers. So they are in a very pathetic situation, right? Many had lost their boots, but they limped on bloodshot. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. Wonderful imagery. These imageries make us understand the vividity with which Owen is describing the horrors of war. People have they are bloodshot, they are lame, they have become blind, they are drunk with fatigue, they don't have water to drink, and they have completely lost their senses, so much so that they are almost deaf to the gas shells which are dropping behind. So their own senses have also depleted in such a way that they are not able to understand that they are in a state of war. So they are deaf, they cannot even hear properly because their senses have depleted in such a way, right? Because of the exhaustion that is there, because of the problems that these people are suffering. So complete loss of senses. Is there any glory in these points? We read till line number 8 till now, but there is no sense of any glory, right? Let us move forward. So now the gas shells are being dropped. These are the gas shells which have poisonous gas, so that the enemy can kill you. So you can be killed by the enemy. Look at line number 9. Gas, gas, quick boys. An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling and floundering like a man in fire of lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea, I saw him drowning. What is being described in these lines? In these lines, the death of a soldier is being described who was not able to wear the gas mask properly in time, and now he has inhaled the gas, and as under a green sea, the author, the poet Wilfred Owen is seeing him drowning, right? So these 4 lines that we just read, line 10 to line 14, it depicts a scene where a soldier is getting killed now. He's getting choked and very soon he will be killed due to the gas shells, and because he was not able to fit his clumsy helmet on time, his mask, and therefore now the gas has entered his lungs and now he will die a very painful, a very pitiful death, right? And the other soldiers, Owen could not save him. So he says that dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea, I saw him drowning. Because Owen was able to wear the mask, on time, and through the mask, through the green masks, he's able to see the misty panes and the thick green light. So through the misty panes of his mask, he is seeing the other person who is drowning, right? Drowning in lime, in that really caustic, chemical. Look at the next few lines, and you will notice that from line number 15 till the end of the poem, there is one single stroke in which Owen has written, in all my dreams before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. Look at these sounds that he is using: guttering, choking, and drowning. So these are the sounds of death. So Wilfred Owen is saying that several nights later on, I still dream of that man who died in front of me, who was guttering, choking, and drowning in lime. His lungs were corrupted by, froth. His lungs were corrupted by the lime, and it has burnt his lungs from within, and now he is there to die a very, very painful death. Next, he says, if in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in and watch the white eyes writhing in this face. So again, look at these words, the wagon that we flung him in and watch the white eyes writhing in this face, right? So these are the sounds of death, guttering, choking, drowning, a very graphic description. This is the strength of Wilfred Owen as a poet. He uses such words which makes it very, graphic. The entire experience of reading the poem becomes very graphic. He's able to sensitize the readers through his, reading of the poetry, through his writing, right? And watch the white eyes writhing in this face. So his eyes are twisting and turning because of, the pain that he is in. He's in a semi-conscious state, the man who has inhaled, the poisonous gas. His hanging face, and I'm reading ahead, like a devil's sick of sin. Look at the brilliant, irony that he has used here. His hanging face, what is his hanging face? So because of inhaling the lime, his face is hanging, and it's like a devil who is sick of sin. So a very, very, what you can say, a very devilish imagery, a devil who is himself sick of sin. So the condition of the boy, of the young man, is very, very bad. It's a very crude, very horrific details of war that Wilfred Owen is giving us, and he's doing that. Why? Because he wants us to understand that there is no glory in war, that this is the reality, and one should never go at war, right? If you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth corrupted lungs, bitter as the cud. So he's describing, obviously these lines are very crude. A cud is basically a partly digested food, right? It is something that, any food which comes back to the mouth, and it obviously tastes very bad. So basically what Owen is doing by using such details, he's making the entire experience of what that man felt very vivid for each and every one of us. What that soldier felt, he's making it very vivid for each and every one of us, right? So if you could hear at every jolt the blood which was come gargling from the froth corrupted lungs, bitter as the cud of vile incurable sores on innocent tongues, right? So this is what the man is going through. He's saying that these details are very crude. It shows the disgust that Owen has for war. So basically these horrific details are described for that, right? Bitter as the cud of vile incurable sores on innocent tongues. And he goes, look at the last 4 lines. My friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie, Dulce et Decorum est pro patria mori. Right? So if you read the last 10 lines in one go, he says that if you look at the man whom we flung, if you look at his face, if you look at the way that his lungs were, frothing, and the way that his mouth was frothing due to the, lime, and the way that his eyes were writhing, and the way that this young man suffered so much because of inhaling the lime gas, and because of, the way that we saw him. If you see all of this, then you will not go back to tell the old lie, and that is, it is honorable to die for one's country. You will not uphold this lie, this very famous lie, which has often been propagated, that it is very honorable, it is very good and very honorable to die for a country. Right? So this is what is told to the warriors, to instill a sense of pride, to instill a sense of, a feeling to serve the nation, right? So he's saying that if you look at the pathetic situation that, the warriors were going through during World War I, then you will not, if you look at the reality, if you are, akin with the reality, if you know the reality, then you will never go and tell this old lie, that is, Dulce et Decorum est pro patria mori. So Wilfred Owen calls it as a lie. He says that it is a lie. It is only given to children who are desperate for some, who are ardent for some desperate glory, So this is a lie, that it is, and this, lines that we just now read, Dulce et Decorum est pro patria mori, it means it is pleasant and proper to die for one's country. So Owen says that it is not so, right? Avan says that it is not pleasant. It is not at all pleasant or honorable, because the kind of deaths that these people go through, it's not honorable. There is no honor in that. And this is exactly what Siegfried Sassoon was also telling us, if you remember. One must also think that these kind of images that Avan has used, that one may also hold the view that through these images Avan is using pity. Of course there is pity in it, but the poem is not pitiful in nature. Rather, Owen has a vision in it. I would say Wilfred Owen has a vision in it. He's not there to induce a sense of pity for what these people went through. Rather, his vision is to make all of us understand, to make the readers understand that there is no glory in dying for any cause, because there is no glory in the pathetic ways in which these people have died, right? And obviously this is something which is very true in the instances of war. Often, many times, we are not even able to collect the entire body of the armed forces, right? So it's always better to avoid war until and unless the war comes really close to us, and it completely jeopardizes our very sustenance. So basically, Wilfred Owen wants us to understand that he wants to propagate his anti-war feelings through this. So through the various descriptions of the froth-corrupted lungs, through the writhing eyes, through the way in which he saw him guttering, choking, and drowning, through the way he saw him drowning in a sea. So through these, what you can say, through these crass and crude imageries, Owen is basically trying to sensitize the readers into the reality of the suffering of the man, of the armed forces, of the people who are sent into war. And so basically this entire jingoism, this chest thumping, basically Owen is trying to make us understand that one must always avoid this. Also, you will notice that the initial first few lines, where he's describing his entire army, his entire battalion, who were bent double and they were suffering because of the weight that they have to carry. So also in the initial first few 7-8 lines, in the initial 10 lines, I would say, a group is being described. It's like a collective, a united suffering of the entire group. But however, the last 10 to 15 lines describes the suffering of just one man, right? So initially it begins with there is a united suffering of the entire group, but later on it becomes the suffering of just one individual later on, one individual man. So this is where the strength of the poem lies. So the Owen's poem is very direct, it is very clear, it uses certain metaphors, it uses certain similes, it creates a very vivid, a very graphic, a very what you can say, a very oral, a very visual description of what these men had gone through due to the war. So his poetry is very direct, it is very scathing, and obviously it is very hard hitting, and it is very real, right? So Owen's goal is basically to attack the dictum that war is glorious. He basically wants to say that there are so many people who believe that war is glorious, but it is not. It should only be the last resort, right? So if you analyze the metaphors, if you analyze the images, the similes, the tone of the poem, this entire poem, Dulce, Decorum est, you will understand the larger idea that Owen is trying to tell us. So this poem actually is unlike any other poem, which talks about beautiful things. So poetry is not always about beautiful things. Poetry can be equally about the tragic things in life. So here the poetry is very shocking, it's tragic, it's hard hitting, it forces us to think, and it is very scathing, it is very direct, and at the same time, most importantly, it is an absolutely real account of what Wilfred Owen had witnessed in his time while he was serving in the British Army. So that is pretty much the end of this lecture, the second topic of the unit, War and Violence. We understood the various imageries. I went into a detailed reading of the poem. I hope the readers were able to make some sense of it, and do comment your suggestions, do comment your observations. If there is anything which I did not take up, or anything which I could improve, in the suggestions are always welcome. Suggestions and feedback is always welcome. I will see you very soon in the next part, in the third topic. So till then, keep watching Hansraj e-Samvaad, keep commenting, keep liking the video, do share it amongst your friends, and I hope it helps you. See you very soon. Goodbye for now. Jai Hind.